Okay, so with all that in mind, I want to give you my 3 college football teams who pop. Like the 3 teams, when I think about next year and the national championship discussion and who might do what and who's probably the favorite to do what, these 3 teams are really high on my list. And it's not going to be, I'm not going out on a limb here, okay? So just so you know, you're going to be like, sweet, nice, way to really reach here. But Oregon, Miami, and Indiana. When I think about the favorites to win the college football national championship next year, it starts with those 3 teams. And yes, Miami was just in the Natty, Indiana just won the Natty, and Oregon was just in the semifinals. So that would exclude who? Ole Miss, yeah. Who I think has the best QB in the sport. So here's why I like each of these teams. When you start with Oregon, Dante Moore took his lumps last year, struggled at times in big games, but also made great plays in big games. The fourth quarter against UW, the fourth quarter against Iowa, where Atticus Sappington was brilliant too. ASAP, former Beaver, Central Catholic High, I believe. Oregon will need to replace him this year with Gage Jurek, West Lynn High, local. Saw him kick in high school. Great leg. 2 for 4 in the spring game. Has all the distance you'd ever want. Just got to work on the accuracy a little bit, but he has an absolute leg. That defensive front 4, man, Tatum Tuioti, Mateo Uiagalelei, Amari Washington, and Bear Alexander, getting all 4 of those guys to come back really reminds me of the Ohio State team from a couple of years ago that won the Natty with Jack Sawyer and JT anchoring that team. Remember, that Ohio State team at times really struggled on offense, even in the playoff against Texas in the semifinals. They scored 21 offensive points, and 7 of those came on a fluky, busted screenplay at the end of the first half. So without that play, they scored 14 offensive points in that game. It was not a very good offense. It was an elite defense led by veteran guys. And I think the more we're watching the portal world and the NIL world, yes, recruiting out of high school is huge. It's huge. But it's even more important to recruit the portal and evaluate talent as good as anyone. Oregon leads the nation in transfer portal players drafted, aka guys who they've brought in from the portal who have eventually got drafted. I believe they have 17 of them in the past 3 years, and the next it was a draft nugget on ESPN, but it's the last couple of years Oregon leads the nation in transfer portal guys drafted with 17. Obviously, Dylan Thieneman, first rounder last year. Coy Parrish could be next, the Minnesota transfer, former 5-star guy, local Minnesota kid. That's why he went to Minnesota, played 2 years there. He'll be a junior Oregon this year. He is insanely athletic, much like Dylan Thieneman last year. It's all about that front 4, though, and Dante Moore's experience. And, you can get wowed by the skill, and you certainly should. Evan Stewart, DeCorian Moore. Name me a better wide receiver duo in the country next year. Seriously, I mean, maybe you could say Malachi Tony and Cooper Barkate. Maybe you could say Isaiah Satania and Parker Livingston. I wouldn't. Like, those guys are unbelievable. Both former 5-stars. Obviously, Eastu, transfer from A&M, was sensational 2 years ago. Had to sit out all of last year with, I believe, an ACL. And so, anyways, those guys, the 2 skill guys at running back, Jamari Johnson at tight end, Kendra Harrison's going to be a true freshman 5-star. He was out there in the spring game. The O-line's really the only question mark. The DBs, Aaron Flowers back, Brandon Finney, maybe the best true freshman in the country last year, certainly one of them. Obviously back, a couple other guys, Naeem Offord, Trey McNutt. Those guys are all back. Anyways, you got a really, really, really good core at every position group other than the O-line, only because it's a question mark. You do have Poncho back. That's incredible. Back for a senior season at center, anchoring the line. That is huge. He's one of the very best centers in college football. Projected first-round draft pick, by the way, according to The Athletic next season. Also have Dave Iuli back at right guard. I went through Oregon football in particular a couple weeks ago, but they brought in a Yale transfer who's probably going to start at right tackle in his final year of eligibility. He was first-team All-Ivy League for a couple of years. They did that a couple of years ago, too. I forget which guy it was off the top of my head, but they'll have that guy probably starting. I think his name's Michael Bennett at right tackle. Then you have Fox Crater, to work in left tackle. You also have Emmanuel Iheanacho, who's a true freshman 5-star. He could end up being a great player for you. You got a couple other guys, Janoris Wilson, who have been with the program for a while. So certainly not lacking in talent for sure. But remember last year they brought in Harkey from Texas State to anchor the right side, and that ended up doing well for them. Isaiah World from Nevada paid him $800 or $900 to come over from the Mountain West. Like Jeff Choate says, come to Nevada, we'll develop you, and then Oregon will pay you $1 million. He was probably literally thinking of Isaiah World when he said that, which is really funny. So there you go. There's your rundown on Oregon. Schedule, nothing crazy. Again, that Boise State game week 1, man, Oregon all time against Boise State is 1-2, and candidly, they were lucky to win that game at home against Boise 2 years ago with Ashton Genty. Oregon had 2 different special teams touchdowns in that game, and if not for those 2 different special teams touchdowns, they probably lose. They gave up 1 million yards to Genty. At times Dante Moore has been bad, and at times the defense has been bad. Like, I get it. And both those things really reared their heads against Indiana in the semis. Like, you throw a pick 6 to D'Angelo Pons on the first play of the game, then you also fumble the ball. You basically gave Indiana 21 points in the blink of an eye. And again, you just hope that Dante grows from that experience because it was really bad. But Dylan Raiola is right behind him. And listen, he's coming off a broken leg, but to get Nebraska to 6-2 last year as a true sophomore before he broke his leg against USC, they had the lead in that game, by the way, when he did. To get them to a bowl game as a freshman for the first time in 9 years, like I just can't possibly state how impressed I am about doing those two things. It's like dragging the Jets to the playoff as a rookie, basically. It'd be like if Sam Darnold took the Jets to the playoffs as a rookie. Like he was that good. Oregon's schedule: Boise State at Oklahoma State, Portland State at USC, sneaky tough game. UCLA, Nebraska, at Illinois, Northwestern, and then November's kind of tough. At Ohio State, Michigan, at Michigan State on a Friday night, short week after you host Michigan, and then home against UW. Now, you could argue Michigan State, and UW are all down right now, but again, Michigan State, new coach, Pat Fitzgerald, that's a road game in November on a Friday night. It's going to be frigid there. I mean, that's got 26-23 written all over it. UW at home. Again, I don't think much of Damon Williams or Jed Fish. No disrespect if they happen to watch this. I don't think much of them as a true threat. Michigan, all the respect in the world for Kyle Whittingham. We'll see on Bryce Underwood. That's totally a TBD after a rough true freshman year. And then obviously Ohio State. At Ohio State, yes, they lost 1 million dudes to the draft, but it's Ohio State. They bring in the next 5-star every year. They've probably had a bunch of 5-stars in waiting all over that defense, and we'll see who that is. Wasn't overly impressed with Sayin last year though, and I do think that Oregon can get them at Ohio State. Last time Oregon was at Ohio State, coached by Mario Cristobal, quarterbacked by Anthony Brown, Oregon was able to win that game. C.J. Verdell, the hero in that game for Oregon. Oregon ran for like 300 yards on that Ohio State defense. Okay, so that's number one. Miami and Indiana are my other teams that pop. I'm kind of trying to keep this video a little bit short just for the sake of the old YouTube audience, but here's what I like about Miami. It starts with Darian Mensah. Broke multiple Duke records last year. Let me just close this out. I'm sorry. Broke multiple Duke records last year as their QB, threw for close to 40 touchdowns, accounted for an insane amount of yardage, and led Duke to their first ACC title in football outright since the 60s. I just can't possibly overstate how incredibly impressed I am with that. Tough game against Virginia, won it in OT. And the thing that was even more impressive about Mensah last year is it's not like there were a ton of 5-stars around him where he was just throwing the ball up and they were making plays. Nothing wrong with the Joe Burrow teams, who are, that's one of the most iconic teams in college football history. He literally set all-time CFB records for passing, threw for 60-plus passing touchdowns that season. Went undefeated, won the Natty. It's of course, one of the great college football teams ever. There was just an insane amount of talent out wide there. Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, etc. And again, Burrow was unbelievable, deserved the Heisman the whole 9 yards. All I'm saying is it was really cool to see Mensah do all of that last year with guys who weren't 5-star skill guys. Cooper Barkate was a great player, though. Mater Dei High School alum. believe he was an Ivy Leaguer, then went to Duke, and now he was part of that Prime 112 recruiting dinner. We had some athletic reporting on that. Apparently Cristobal and Shannon Dawson, the OC, who is back, and by the way, Corey Heatherman, the DC, is back from Miami. So Miami and Indiana, both teams who made the Natty, retained their coordinators, which is huge. That's the other big mystery for Oregon that everyone knows about. Will Stein is now the head coach at Kentucky. Tosh Lupoy is now the head coach at his alma mater, Cal. So new coordinators on the Oregon side. But Shannon Dawson back as OC, Corey Heatherman back as DC. On the Miami side, Shanahan and Haynes back as the coordinators for Curt Cignetti. You got Mensa, you got Cooper Barkate, who's incredible. Mark Fletch, the running back, is back. Malachi Toney, who was a fantastic true freshman receiver last year, he just looked faster than everyone. It felt like prime Tyreek Hill in the NFL, where you're like, yeah, that guy's just going to run 4 verts, and there's nothing you could do about it because he is literally just faster than everyone. That was Malachi Toney last year. A lot of tunnel screens to him. I'd probably send him long. Again, I do think that was a Carson Beck arm issue, fresh off arm surgery. His arm got murdered by that Texas linebacker in that Hail Mary throw in the SEC title game 2 years ago. Man, I really think that Miami's going to be much better on offense this year because Mensa's going to be able to throw the ball deep. Miami couldn't throw the ball deep last year because of Beck's injury, and they're going to be able to do that this year. And Toney's a deep threat. Barkate is like a possession receiver, but also a deep threat because he makes crazy acrobatic catches. I think you guys are going to be really impressed with him. Dude, those two receivers, that quarterback who's also quite mobile, nothing crazy mobile, not Lamar or Deshaun Watson or anything like that, but definitely mobile enough to where you need to spy him. And then Mark Fletcher, just a bulldozer of a running back. Like, dude, Miami has so much talent, man. Big question with them. How do you replace Ruben Bain? How do you replace Akeem Mesidor? You would think by default they won't be nearly as good on defense, but those guys were high first-round draft picks. Shout out to the Chargers for netting Akeem Mesidor in the 20s there. So that would be what you'd be, quote, worried about, is replacing the pass rush. But I think the offense for Miami is going to take a huge step forward. And the continuity with those coordinators back. Cristobal, for as much shit as you want to give him for game management, he hired a clock game management guy full-time. That's the thing about Miami, man, is there's just so much money there. There's just so much money there that they can out-recruit almost everyone. Like I've mentioned, I'm almost tired of telling this story, but they had to pay the Mensa NIL settlement for probably $4 million. That was what was left on his deal with Duke, and then they gave him 6 or 7 after that. I do think all in Mensa alone is like a $10 or $11 million quarterback, which is just absolutely absurd. By the way, he's only a junior, so he does have more eligibility after this. This season alone, he's probably making 6 or 7 and all in terms of what they had to pay to get him out of that Duke deal. Because why would he leave a good situation for the same amount of money? He wouldn't. He left for a situation with a ton of talent around him and a ton more money. Yeah, man. I mean, and they can also pitch like, hey, we developed Cam Ward. Didn't really develop. Hey, we bought Cam Ward from Washington State and then in 8 months turned him into the number 1 draft pick. By the way, Cam Ward looks like a big-time bust. That does not look good. But I do love Miami. I do think with all the money flowing in there and Mensa, I just think the world of Mensa. I think he was underrated last year because he played at Duke, but he is a great, great player. And finally, Indiana. It's my third team who pops in the preseason. Again, OC Shanahan back, DC Bryant Haynes back. Been going on a Twitter rampage lately. Sig told him to chill out. I love that Nick Marsh, the Michigan State transfer receiver, who is now paired with Charlie Becker as the new Cooper and Surratt. Like, I love that he came in wearing gold cleats, and Cignetti was like, get the fuck out. Get out and change those cleats into the team-issued Adidas silvers or whites. I love that energy. He's a rigid, no BS, no nonsense guy who's like, we're going to play team ball. You check your ego at the door, and if you don't like that, go ahead and leave. We don't need you. And here's the other thing about Indiana. Like, I know Cuban notoriously took some credit for getting Mendoza. Talked about how he's been throwing a couple million around, and Cignetti been very clear that they haven't spent anywhere close to the top teams, Indiana, Miami, etc., in terms of roster spending, and I totally believe that. I think Ohio State and Indiana have been spending $40-50 million. Sorry, Ohio State and Miami have been spending $40-50 million on their roster, and I really do believe that Indiana only spend 10 to 20 or so. But the reason they're able to do that is because Cignetti is not good. He is great at evaluating talent. And Josh Hoover's the next Mendoza in his eyes. He's also just a great QB coach in general. I think that's kind of his background. But Josh Hoover, 23-year-old, fifth-year senior, got all the experience. Cignetti doesn't want anything to do with your five-star QB. Like, Bryce Underwood is the anti-Cignetti QB. He wants nothing to do with Bryce Underwood and a five-star QB. He maybe Bryce Underwood in 5 years from now, if he's developed and good, he would certainly take him. But right now, he wants the 22, 23-year-old, fourth, fifth, sixth-year guy, and he has that in Hoover. I've seen him play in person a couple times. Great arm, really, really mobile, really fast, probably a little faster than Mendoza, who was a really underrated runner, really fast guy. So he's a little frail, skinnier than Mendoza. I mean, Mendoza's a big-ass dude, man. I just think the world of Mendoza. I think he's a generational type QB. I think he's so great. It'll be tough to replace how truly great and accurate he was, but Hoover's next in line. Obviously, you do lose Elijah Surratt and Omar Cooper Jr., who are just unbelievable. The back shoulder fade, or just back shoulder pass in general to Surratt, was the most unstoppable play in college football in quite some time. Probably since like the back shoulder that Burrow and Jamar or Justin Jefferson would run. I can't believe those guys were on the same team. So yeah, They were great last year, and obviously they're both gone. They do bring back Charlie Becker, who totally mossed a Buckeye in the Big Ten title game to clinch the game. He totally mossed Brandon Finney a couple times in the semifinal against Oregon, including for a deep ball touchdown. So he is a great player. Wore number 80 last year, and then Marsh. I haven't seen him much. Michigan State's obviously been a pretty irrelevant team the last couple of years. But I imagine if Sig likes him, he is a great player. So we shall see. They do lose Roman Hemby and Kalen Black. Those top two running backs are really good players. So be tough to replace them. They do bring back Landino and some other good D linemen. That's huge. Obviously, like I mentioned earlier in the pod, Aiden Fisher's gone. D'Angelo Ponza's gone. So tough to lose those guys because those were the two of the very, very best players at their position in the sport last year. I just think the world of Aiden Fisher, but and Pons, of course, who had the pick six to start the semifinal. But those are my three teams that pop, man. Oregon, Miami, and Indiana. I think you got to have them as heavy favorites to get to the Natty, which will be played on January 25th this year.